Okay. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the conversation series on mediation, created with an aim to promote awareness of mediation in the world around us, and to talk about mediation and other alternative dispute resolution systems from the perspective of a common person. We continue with a short legal disclaimer. The views expressed herein are personal perspectives of the speakers, and they may or may not represent the legal or the larger professional community they belong to. The conversation series aims to provide a general overview and awareness on the subject matter involved and may not be construed as a legal or a professional advice in any manner whatsoever. The session is being recorded for wide circulation. Let me introduce the lead speaker and the guest panelists who are going to contribute in today's conversation on mediation in medical care. We have Ms. Brenda Edith Vargas Almaza, a lawyer and a certified mediator, as the lead speaker. She is a public servant on board Mexican Institute of Social Security, head of Legal Affairs Division, responsible for promotion of the Center for Dispute Resolution Mechanism at the Cardiology Hospital of the Mexican Institute of Social Security in Montreal. Welcome on board, Brenda, and it's a pleasure to have you here. We have Ms. Jacqueline, who will be translating for Brenda. Thank you for your benevolence, Jacqueline. It's a pleasure.
Anytime.
Mrs. Archana Sethi is a rehabilitation therapist and a special educator. She has a vast experience of 26 years in her working dealing with specially abled children. She is a mother of two amazing children, a daughter, a serving officer in the Indian Army, and son, a medical student. Welcome on board, ma'am. It's a pleasure to have you. Lieutenant Colonel Sandeep Bansal has done his master's in forensic medicine. He is currently an assistant professor. He is in the Department of Forensic Medicine, Armed Forces Medical College, Pune. Welcome on board, Lieutenant Colonel. It's a pleasure. Advocate Shazia Kaursar is a practicing advocate in the state of Jammu and Kashmir and the Ladakh High Court. She has completed her master's in criminal law and has a vast experience in handling both civil and criminal courts. Welcome on board, and we have a wonderful team together. So we'll first start with Brenda explaining us what actually is medical mediation from the perspective of a common person. Over to you, Brenda.
Jacqueline? Are you mute?
Jacqueline, you are on mute. Jacqueline, you are on mute.
Sorry.
No problem. I'll mute myself.
Sí, que Brenda va a explicarnos qué es la salud, la mediación en salud.
Muchas gracias, antes que nada, por la invitación. Estoy muy contenta de estar aquí con ustedes.
Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
La mediación en salud es una gran oportunidad para conciliar la comunicación entre médicos y pacientes.
So mediation in health, it's very important to conciliate the relationship between the patient and the doctor.
Asimismo, la mediación en salud nos brinda también la oportunidad de disolver las percepciones equivocadas que suelen presentarse en la prestación de los servicios médicos.
Furthermore, mediation in health helps us to go further in the relationship with the patient and the doctor.
Ciertamente, cuando una persona se encuentra en situación de hospital o de enfermedad, es cuando está más vulnerable que nunca.
Certainly, when a person is in a medical situation, is when they are the most vulnerable.
Y es cuando necesita, más que nunca, ser escuchado con todos los sentidos.
And that's when they need to be the mostly heard in all their senses.
También es posible que la condición de enfermedad le confunda y limite a los pacientes para sentirse escuchados y para entender realmente las instrucciones médicas cuando las reciben.
So in this situation, it makes it complicated for patients to understand what the medical condition they are going through and to understand all this.
La importancia de contar con servicios de mediación en salud dentro de un hospital
The importance of counting with this mediation in health center in hospitals
es precisamente que nos brinda la oportunidad de atender los conflictos desde el componente jurídico y emocional.
Okay, so this helps from the juridical point to support the patient and also the hospital.
That is very nice. I wanted to ask you, your work generally involves in the hospital itself. You're supporting the patients in the hospital, Brinda?
¿Estás tú apoyando a los pacientes en el hospital? O sea, ¿tú apoyas a las personas en el hospital?
Sí, los conflictos que se presentan en el hospital son atendidos desde la cuestión de la petición de los pacientes. Se les hace saber que se brinda ese servicio y hemos tenido respuesta muy satisfactoria.
Yes, they are actually supporting patients in this field, and they have received a satisfactory response from them.
That's really wonderful, because that's a new idea as far as India is also concerned. We, as of now, do not have mediation services in the hospital. I will ask Dr. Bansal about it. What is your opinion? Like Brenda is doing a wonderful work out there in Mexico. She is, I think, on board of what I understood, that she is on public center on board of a Mexican Institute of Social Security and promotion for Center for Dispute Resolution Mechanism in Cardiology Hospital. So, what is your opinion? Like, could a service like this, if associated with Indian hospitals, would it be an advantage? What's your opinion?
First of all, greetings to all the esteemed panelists and the audience, and my wishes for the Happy New Year.
Thank you so
And
much.
I'll thank Dr. Sonakrunda ma'am for bringing us together to discuss very, very relevant topics, especially in our times in India, where we all know what is how much delay is there in litigation in this kind of cases. Now, coming to your question, ma'am, very, very important question, ma'am, because definitely in India, we are lacking in this. We do not have mediation cells in we don't have any mediation cell in government hospitals. And private hospitals, I have not come across any kind of mediation cell. Some big corporate hospitals, ma'am, do have kept mediators and counselors to counsel the patient in their bereavement, explain them what happened. This is also my own personal experience in a corporate hospital in Ghaziabad, in New Delhi. And I've heard of them from other friends also and colleagues also, that these facilities are being these days provided by some of the hospitals. Whenever some fatality is there, they are offering counseling to the members, and they're explaining what happened, that why the patient could not be saved. Definitely this thing is there, but there is as such no legal mediation cell. In case there is a grievance and they want to have a justice, they are making an accusation against the hospital or doctor, there's no such legal mediation cell to help these patients, ma'am, by any hospital. But definitely, ma'am, Government of India is making proactive steps in the Consumer Protection Act 2019. That now a new clause has been introduced as mediation clause, ma'am, wherein whenever a matter goes to a court, consumer forum, consumer commission, whenever a patient who's a aggrieved party as a litigant is approaching a consumer forum, there's the option of going through mediation. Whenever the consumer commission sees that there is an element of mediation possible, where both the parties with their consent can agree on mediation. Then from the list of empaneled mediators, the mediators can be selected and a proper arbitration and mediation can be made and the matter can be settled without going into litigation. This is definitely there and it's upcoming.
Yeah. So when we say that this is there, but actually on ground,
It's a long journey. On ground, yeah,
long
definitely it's a
journey. Yeah.
long journey, and now we are in nascent stage. In
Yes.
2019, only the consumer has brought this new clause, and even majority are not aware. Even lawyers are also not aware.
Yes. So, let's talk to Shazia here. As far as legal things are concerned, when law doesn't take into account feelings, as we can, say, because law works on litigation, their own legalities, their own permutation and combination, the logic, maybe not even the logic, technically speaking, because whatever evidence and all. So, how easy and difficult it is to manage a case of medical legal, uh, to establish the case.
First of all, good evening, everyone, and good morning to the ladies who are not in India. Ma'am, when this topic is concerned of medical negligence, first of all, I would like to mention here that in India, we do not have strong laws on this as far as mediation is concerned, ma'am. We do not have strong laws on this. So as far as my personal experience is concerned, whenever I come across patients, they have that kind of feeling in them that they want to take revenge from the doctors, or they have that feeling that the injustice has been done to them. Compensation would never fill that void, fill that gap, which they fill the gap of the lost ones, ma'am. I feel this. As far as I think, ma'am, I just believe that, ma'am, could you just please, ma'am?
Yeah, Shazia? I think we
Sorry, ma'am, sorry.
no problem, no problem.
Ma'am, could you just please repeat your question, ma'am?
Yeah, Shazia, I just wanted to ask, like, is it easier to establish medical negligence for a lawyer? With the evidence, because I asked this question because I think it will be relevant when we'll talk to Dr. Bansal also. It will be relevant that. Okay, let's talk to Dr. Bansal then, first of all. That Dr. Bansal, is it plausible, with plausible conviction, can we say that medical procedure, there has been human error can be quantified or qualified? With plausible
Thank you for this question, ma'am. Very, very relevant and important question. Ma'am, whenever such a case is there where there is an allegation against a doctor or hospital of medical negligence, and whenever litigation happens, now courts, that's what the courts are deciding. First, whether it's an act of negligence, that is a can we qualify this act or whatever the event, untoward event has occurred? Can we qualify that it is an act of medical negligence? Secondly, if it's qualified that it's an act of medical negligence, how to quantify? How, in what terms can we quantify this act? Now, coming to ma'am, qualification of the act, ma'am. We have an advocate with us, Ms. Shazia, lawyer Shazia, and she can also confirm, ma'am, the most of the courts in India, the test being followed to qualify these acts is called Boehm's test, ma'am. Basically, the Boehm test is based on a legal judgment in United Kingdom, Boehm Marriage Committee, 1957. The conclusion of this judgment formed the basis of the Boehm test, which is being applied by the courts in India and also the courts in United Kingdom. And basis of this Boehm test, we qualify whether there was a medical negligence was there or not. Now, first of all, there are two parts of the ma'am. I will just elaborate briefly. What is this Boehm test? There are two parts of the test, ma'am. The first part says that if a doctor reaches a standard of a responsible medical body, whenever there is an allegation of negligence against a doctor, and if an independent, competent medical body, team or board of doctors, the same specialty, they certify that the treatment protocols followed by the doctor were up to the standard, that's not the case of medical negligence. The second component of the Boehm test is whether, ma'am, the doctor exercised a reasonable amount of skill and care in following the treatment protocols. Second, that also is certified by the same board of doctors and a team of the doctors. This is how the courts and even the mediation party arbitrations are done, where the act is qualified as it's a medical as or not. And I just mention a few data, ma'am, before proceeding further. Ma'am, as per the study done in New Delhi, in 2018, there were 2,638 cases of medical negligence consumer forums, ma'am. 2,600 cases in 2018 in one metropolitan city of India. In 2019, as per the study, there were approximately 3,200 cases, ma'am. So, and if I go as per the how many doctors are there in Delhi, then as per the website of medicaldialogues.in, which is a basically website related to medical news, related all over the India, and also brings out the legal news also, ma'am. As per the 2018, about 26,000 doctors were registered with the Delhi Medical Commission in Delhi. So this comes out to be around 10 to 15% of the doctors are entangled in this mesh of medical negligence. So around so many cases, it's a huge number, man. It's huge data. So, and another government order, another state in northern India ordered a government panel to review the cases of medical negligence. It was found out that only 15% of the cases were actually plausible cases. Actually, there was a medical negligence, only 15% of the cases. 85% they found that they did not have any merit in the cases. There was no merit in the complaints. Now, coming back to the ma'am, now when there's an allegation against a doctor of a medical negligence, from a layman or patient's point of view, when they have not found that they have lost someone, definitely, ma'am, that loss cannot be made by anything. But definitely, every patient cannot be recovered. I'm not defending the medical fraternity here, but these are the facts, ma'am.
Yes, that really is, and that really is a big number. 85% of, if we say, cases where medical negligence was not there, and yet the case was registered and the case went to the court. So
Yeah.
when we talk about these cases are those cases where medical negligence was not there, but there was something missing that the patients wanted to ask. We come back to Mrs. Sethi.
Definitely, ma'am. I'm understanding where are you taking it, ma'am. Definitely, there was a lack of communication, ma'am.
Yes.
Definitely, there was a lack of communication. And ma'am, as if you review the literature on alternate dispute resolutions, maximum cases are found that patients' relative, as my own relatives, I know they are laymen. They don't know actually what's happening because medical lingo is not understandable to them.
Yes.
And doctors, even in corporate hospitals, are not spending that much time explaining it to relatives. And I can't even blame them relatives. I can't even blame the doctors, ma'am. And basically, in Indian scenario, we have a rural India, we have a urban India. There is a huge communication gap, ma'am. Even
And
myself as a doctor.
this we are talking about urban India. Let's talk to Mrs. Sethi here, where we come from an independent person's perspective, Mrs. Sethi, and from putting yourself in the shoes of a consumer here, because here the service provider is the medical service. Now, when this thing happens, it do emotions play a lot of role here? Because as an independent human being, because even if negligence is not there, and they have their code of ethics, they have their medical code, I think that they will they get it signed also, that anything, the outcome of the procedure could be anything. Now when something goes wrong, what actually is a patient looking at from the perspective of a common person? I would request you to ask.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's very, very, very important to have a common man's perspective in this regard. So at the beginning, our guest speaker said that when a person goes to a doctor, it's a complete state of vulnerability. I'm extremely vulnerable. I am not in a state, in a proper healthy status when I go to a doctor. So it's a complete surrender that I do to a medical practitioner. So, and then if there is some act that happens, which to my understanding appears to be negligence, So the first thing that I would actually require, or that needs to be done, is one, empathy from the doctor, that I really, because more often than not, what happens is, like, as what the doctor on the panel also suggested, lack of time, or there is some kind of business protocol, or I fail to understand what, but doctors do seem to not have enough time for the common person who comes to them as a visitor. So that actually kind of increases the magnitude of the persons, of the clients, what do you call that, state of depression, or that state of being cheated even more. So that's one. So we need, as a common person, one expects empathy. That's one. Second is that lack of information. So I really do not, very rightly pointed out, that I do not understand your medical lingo. I more often than not may not even speak the language that you're speaking to your colleagues. So I really don't know what's happening. And then something happens which is not to the best of my interest. So I definitely need to have complete information as to what went wrong and what was the procedure that was being followed. So if you take care of my these two aspects, the person is comforted enough. Then also, I also wanted to have an understanding that when we say that the negligence to what? So one is that there's the fatality, that the person, that you lose somebody who's your loved one. Second is that it may cause a damage which is lifelong. That there's something went wrong in the procedures, and there's a damage which the person or a client has to face now, the ramifications of that lifelong. So depending on the magnitude of the negligence caused to me, is my reaction is going to be like that. So it could be ranging from complete what do you call that, depression, to absolute anger.
Yes.
So I could range from forgiving to the range of hanging the doctor, if I may use that term.
Yes,
So
definitely.
like that's the kind of emotional state or the emotional range that I may vary from. So I think the role of a mediator certainly would be a great idea. And I really don't know, when you say that 85% of the cases that were being registered were not seen as an act of negligence, was it truly not the act of negligence, or were they kind of revolved in the legal lingo, so to say, and they emerged as non-negligent cases? So that's where, it's that kind of ambiguity is what actually kills the common man. I don't want to be in an ambiguous state. I really need to have a clarification, transparency, and so that's all that, because more often than not, we do get roped in ignorance.
Yes. Now, at this point, I would like to ask Brenda, how do you manage the anger in the mediation room? Because anger and then emotional vulnerability. Then like Archana, I'm calling you ma'am, that she said that I don't understand the medical lingo. Now there is ignorance, there is anger, and there is the emotional vulnerability, or if I may use the term, that we are, the patient or the person is emotionally compromised, they're not in their full emotional intellect. So how does Brenda handle that in the mediation? We all would love to know that. Jacqueline, please.
Brenda, ¿cómo manejas el enojo de los pacientes cuando están precisamente en una situación muy vulnerable, están mezcladas emociones, el paciente está muy vulnerable? ¿Cómo manejas situaciones de enojo del paciente con la mediación?
Bueno, una pregunta muy interesante y muy importante que no puede faltar.
A very interesting and very important question that we must not omit or dismiss.
En este caso, quisiera hacer una breve acotación sobre un caso que tuvimos recientemente.
I would like to mention a quote about a recent situation that we had.
El paciente, más bien se trataba de un familiar de un paciente que tenía precisamente mucho enojo, porque requería, desde el punto de vista personal, un tratamiento para su hijo.
There was the relative was one angry, like with this anger. The patient was his son, and they needed treatment. Their son needed a treatment, and this person was very angry.
La comunicación con el médico especialista, en este caso, al parecer no fue la adecuada.
Okay, the communication with the doctor was definitely not the appropriate communication.
Porque el médico tenía mucho trabajo y estaba con las prisas.
Okay, because the doctor had tons of work and he was in a rush.
Y por su parte, pues la mamá del paciente, interpretaba que no le daban la importancia.
And the patient's mom was interpreting that they were not giving the importance that she.
Y en este caso,
Sí.
al escucharla a la mamá del paciente, y se le brindó la oportunidad de explicarle detenidamente por conducto de otro especialista.
Okay, so there was she was explained by the means of another specialist to the mom. It was like they were giving assistance to the mom, but from another specialist doctor.
Y en este caso, al brindarle la explicación desde un punto de vista técnico médico,
And from this point of view, from the medical point of view,
ella pudo entender que su percepción estaba equivocada y se sintió escuchada y cambió totalmente la actitud que ella tenía.
so once she heard this explanation from this expert or this specialist doctor, like from this point of view, she was able to understand and calm down and now like realize to get better, to understand better the situation and feel understood.
En este caso, quiero puntualizar que el enojo originalmente era a tal grado que ella lo expresó en los medios, en las redes sociales.
Okay, so at this point, the anger was, she wants to emphasize that the anger she had was so huge that she even expressed it on social media.
Sin embargo, una vez que recibió la atención, tuvimos 2 sesiones de mediación en donde ella tuvo la oportunidad de ser escuchada con mucha paciencia.
Nevertheless, she was able to give there were 2 situations like in mediation, like they interfered in mediation, and she was able to express herself and communicate and explain and all that.
La situación actualmente cambió drásticamente de manera favorable al grado que ella está muy satisfecha, muy contenta con el servicio de mediación.
So the situation changed and her feelings changed drastically after the intervention of mediation.
Al grado que ella ha ofrecido voluntariamente brindar su testimonio de satisfacción por el servicio de mediación que ha recibido.
So far that she now wants to be a testimony of her experience of mediation and to approve it and to encourage mediation.
Que en este caso tendremos que ser muy cuidadosos para respetar la confidencialidad de los procedimientos de mediación.
In this case, it will have to be very respectful with the confidence, like the confidence, privacy, the privacy of all the information, of course.
Sin embargo, nos representa una satisfacción el cambio tan drástico, lo que para mí significa la importancia de sentirse escuchados con todos los sentidos.
So it's very satisfactory, like to have these results as mayor, to have like this impact overall on the situation.
Yes, most certainly, yes. And like as you were speaking, it makes a lot of difference to a person that you as a mediator would have felt so good that you actually, I mean, the anger that you actually made it pacify. I mean, and then you made a lot of huge impact that she's willing to testify for mediation. That means you really made her turn around her heart. That was fabulous. I mean, what's your opinion, Ms. Sethi, on that?
No, I just wanted to know one thing, that in this case, was there a case of negligence or it was just lack of information?
Jacqueline?
Brenda?
Brenda, que si fue un caso de negligencia o si solo fue un caso de como falta de información.
Ella pensaba que era negligencia, aducía que su hijo requería un estudio. El estudio se le hizo a su hijo, ¿sí? Sin embargo, es un estudio muy técnico.
Okay, so yeah, basically she thought it was a negligence because she thought his son needed special treatment.
Finalmente, el estudio se le realizó, sin embargo, los resultados del estudio, digamos que no fueron los esperados, pero no fueron malos tampoco.
After all, they did the test and all what was needed, and they didn't receive like good results, but they were not that bad either.
En este caso, más bien, existe la posibilidad de que le vuelvan a realizar el estudio a su hijo, pero por los riesgos es conveniente esperar un tiempo prudente, por decir, se le programó para el mes de marzo.
Okay, so now it is planned to make another test to their son, but to avoid, like, for safety of the patient, they are suggesting to do this studies until March.
A ella se le pudo explicar y ella pudo entender que no es malo, o sea, el resultado del estudio, y que en ocasiones por la misma naturaleza del tipo de enfermedad, es conveniente esperar un tiempo prudente.
So now she could understand, like, the matter, like, of the studies, and now she understands that regarding the situation of the patient, it's important to wait, like, to do the next studies, next tests.
Lo que en este caso quiero puntualizar o enfatizar es la importancia de la intervención del servicio de mediación. Cambió la percepción de ella. Ella interpretaba que había una negligencia y ahora entiende que no es así.
So she really wants to emphasize that the importance of intervening as a mediator, because that made her change her mind and she thought it was a negligence, but at the end it wasn't, and she was able to understand the whole situation and now feel better at the end.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So what are your views, Dr. Bansal, that now that you have seen, that gap between the patient and the doctor, and somewhere, because in the regular routine of a hospital, you cannot, that's what my opinion is. I would like your opinion also. You cannot expect a doctor to be, so proactively explaining, doing the medical procedures with the hard pressed time that they have, to be there has to be a gap of communication that has been there has to be something that joins that gap, that vacuum that is being created. What is your opinion about it?
Ma'am, I definitely feel that there has to be somebody to fill that gap.
Yeah.
And there comes the role of a mediator, ma'am. I definitely feel that hospitals need to have somebody who specializes in this to handle every patient. And wherein corporate hospitals are charging so much of hefty amounts, despite of the insurance cover, and they can easily appoint such specialists, ma'am. It's not a problem. And this will definitely bring down a lot of litigation. Definitely bring down a lot of litigation.
Yes, because like you pointed out, 85% of the cases not found negligence, but there is a miscommunication. And as Brenda has,
most of these cases were not about medical negligence. They were basically what happened: lack of communication, lack of information. Many of them were about reimbursement of bills. Nobody were guiding them how to get these bills reimbursed. Many of them were with the plausible adverse events, like some drug was given, they had adverse reaction, complications were tried to be managed, but could not. Some residual defect was there, but they were not the acts of medical negligence. And these cases were found in this independent government panel appointed by a specialist doctor from different hospitals. There were only 15% of the cases had the merit that they were actually negligent. Doctor has been negligent. Doctor was not qualified to treat the patient. Doctor has not followed the standard protocol of the treatment. Or doctor did not have the proper adequate infrastructure to treat the patient. But definitely, ma'am, this 85% of litigation the companies could have been brought down with the help of mediation.
That's I think that's what I think Brenda also talked about, that when communicated rightly, the things turned around, and there is an emotional satisfaction also. So like Ms. Sethi was pointing out, that there is lack of communication. We need empathy. The patient comes in with a feeling of, complete surrender, like what you said, complete surrender. And when complete surrender and something wrong goes on, now there has to be somebody who has to explain, or who has to do the, that vacuum being created, what happened, why. So that lacuna of, why did this happen to me. I think it is more of getting to know the answer of the why, instead of not accepting what has happened, because
Yeah.
people generally accept. Yes, I would definitely like your views upon that.
Yeah. It's you're talking to me.
Yeah, yes, yes. You said those. I thought, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's bang on. It's the lack of information. So one needs to understand. There has to be a transparency. So when I surrender, I expect transparency. I really, really would want, as a common person or as a client, that I mean, there could be errors. Errors do happen. I understand that, but then I should be in complete know-how of as to what went wrong and why it went wrong. So that's all that is what is needed. And then, as I said, I don't know how does it get covered legally, or how does the mediator take care of that, is when if there's a damage that has happened to me which is irreversible because of an act of whatever has happened in the hospital, then how does a mediator, I mean, is there a way of mediation which can prevent litigation and yet get me my compensation? I don't know. I mean, how does that work? Is
Yeah.
that mediator also does?
Yes, Jacqueline. Does mediation also help in compensatory cases? This was handled like emotions were handled. Now, when
Yeah.
it comes to handling compensation, like
Say, for
something,
example,
yeah,
say, for example, if there has been a damage which is irreversible, and now I need a financial assistance, a financial security of a certain kind, which helps me take care of my rest of this thing. So, does mediation also help me get into that area of
In the
talking with the medical
litigation?
fraternity, or I need to go take the litigation route for that? I mean, how does that work?
So in the litigation, so if mediation also helps in the litigation field, do you mean?
No,
No.
she means to say that if there is actually the rules out there in Mexico might be different.
Okay.
I think they cover all that with insurance. So basically, Jacqueline or Brenda, does mediation help in deciding? I think deciding the monetary percentage of compensation. I think that would be appropriate. Does
Okay.
mediation help in deciding or coming to a figure of monetary compensation? How much should be compensated? Do such cases also come to mediation?
Que si la mediación también influye o afecta la compensación monetaria.
En este caso, ¿en el servicio que yo manejo o el servicio que manejamos en el hospital? No entiendo.
Creo que en México en general. Is the question like regarding like Mexico or specifically on the service that she is providing and she's asking?
We would like both if she's
Both?
able to comment, if she is able to comment on both, that would be a pleasure, because it will be take us for India also, and from globally also, from the global perspective also, it will help everybody, I think.
Okay, okay. Dice que sí, que en ambas, sí tienes la respuesta a ambas, que sí le gustaría como saber en ambas, tanto en el área que tú estás trabajando o en México en general.
O
Si
sea, si me
conoces de
afecta,
ambas.
si
Si
me
la mediación
afecta,
también afecta en la parte monetaria o tiene que ver como con lo monetario, si también juega un papel importante en la compensación monetaria.
será en las percepciones que yo recibo.
Me imagino que en las percepciones que te
Pues,
o sea, de monetariamente dices,
o sea,
lo que
sí,
tú
lo que
recibes.
yo recibo, lo que me pagan como servidor público. La
Okay,
pregunta
so
sería esa.
the monetary sector, you mean like by what she's been receiving, like the monetary compensation she's receiving, or the doctor, or what
No,
exactly?
we actually mean that when such cases come for mediation, so does a mediator also help in deciding or between the parties in negotiating? I should use the term negotiating
Okay,
with the
negotiation.
monetary compensation also that the patient gets.
Okay, no,
Ah,
que
ok.
la negociación, ajá, la negociación entre lo que el paciente
Cuando hay algún
entiende.
caso,
Ajá, en
cuando hay
algún
el
caso
caso.
de, ajá, en
Ok.
algún caso que sí,
En
la
este
mediación tiene que
caso,
ver.
en este caso existe ya desde antes de instaurar la mediación dentro del hospital un área de atención y orientación a los derechohabientes que brindan la alternativa de celebrar convenios cuando es procedente alguna queja.
Okay, so she says that before interfering like in mediation or before including the mediation service in the hospital, before that there is a sector or team that is in charge of handling all this type of issues or organization of the monetary part.
Okay. So that means like we at India also need to, that part is there. That monetary compensation is handled by another division. That means
Yeah.
that's really good. And there has been no discrepancy between, or there has been no mediation on monetary compensation being given by the hospital. Does she ever do that kind of mediation, that there is a discrepancy on the patient wanting this much amount of compensation and the hospital services are not willing to give that much, so there is a mediation being conducted, or such cases? Yeah, please.
A que si te ha tocado vivir alguna situación de discrepancia entre que el paciente esté pidiendo una compensación monetaria y que el hospital no se lo quiera proporcionar.
Bueno, en este caso se puede equiparar alguna vez que algún paciente, por ejemplo, prefirió atenderse en medio privado y no con nosotros, y después reclama que se le reintegre esa cantidad que él gastó, ¿sí? Podría ser un ejemplo. Sin embargo, se somete a valoración de un equipo multidisciplinario.
Okay, so there was a case in which a patient was in a situation like this. This patient decided to go to a private hospital instead of being in the hospital where they work. And then after that, the patient wanted to have the monetary compensation that was spending on the other hospital. And in this case, it was a team, like a particular team who was in charge, an organization that was in charge of handling this type of problem or issue.
Okay. So I think monetary aspects are not being handled by the mediator, then you mean to say.
Yeah, entonces no son manejados directamente por el mediador, es lo que preguntan.
Exacto. No.
Exactly, yeah. No, they don't handle that.
Okay. So that almost serves us because these kind of cases then would require to go to litigation if things do not if they escalate to that level, I think.
Mhm.
So that was really wonderful. And Brenda, would you like to share any other experience in your medical mediation career that you would like to share with the common people?
¿Y te gustaría compartir alguna otra experiencia que hayas tú vivido como las que has compartido en la mediación? ¿Que te
Y
gustaría
bueno,
compartir alguna otra?
sí, claro, brevemente me gustaría mencionar un caso que la verdad me conmovió mucho.
Okay, she would like to share us about a case that got her overwhelmed.
Okay.
En este caso, se trata de un paciente, de un familiar de un paciente, ¿sí? Un señor cuya esposa estaba muy delicada de salud y pues lamentablemente falleció y él se presentó para, pues tenía inquietud si el procedimiento había sido el adecuado.
Okay, so there was this patient. It was a man, and he was married, and his wife was in a delicate situation. And at the end, she passed away. And at the end, he wanted to do research or ask about the procedures that were taken, if they were the right procedures taken.
Y en este caso, el familiar del paciente se acerca un año después del deceso.
So the husband goes a year later to this, like to present the case.
Pero se presenta con una reclamación, ¿sí? de indemnización económica.
But he came with a claim of indemnization. Yeah, is that indemnization? Yeah. Claim, yeah, like requesting a monetary compensation, something.
Entonces, aquí, antes de recibir pues esa reclamación, se le informó que contamos con un servicio de mediación y que quisiéramos explicarle de qué se trata y brindarle la oportunidad si es que a él le interesaba.
So when he came with this claim, they suggested this mediation role to solve the problem, or to see what the problem was going to be. And they wanted to explain him, like if they asked him if he would like to know what this is about and to be part of it.
Y en este caso, él accedió a una sesión para recibir la información sobre el procedimiento de mediación.
And he agreed to have a session to be explained about the process of mediation.
Al llegar a la sala de mediación, al recibirlo, me presenté con él y le ofrecí escucharlo.
And so when he got to the room, Brenda received him and she offered to listen to him.
El señor estaba tranquilo, aunque se notaba algo inquieto o predispuesto con un cierto enojo.
He was overall calm, but he was a bit also like with a bit of anger because of the situation, like predisposed to this emotion of anger, but overall he was calm.
Al momento de ofrecerle este servicio, él hizo una pregunta muy enfática. Me preguntó, ¿cuánto tiempo me puedes escuchar?
Okay, so when this process was starting, he did a very particular question, which was, how much time can you listen to me?
Entonces, con el enojo y con el con el carácter tan firme que él demostraba en ese momento, yo le respondí el que usted necesite.
So with all his feeling and anger and with this situation and feeling he had of anger, Brenda just replied it, whatever time you need.
Él me respondió escéptico. Vamos a ver si es cierto.
He replied skeptical, like let's see if that's true.
Entonces, pues inició la sesión, le expliqué todo el protocolo y le pedí que estaba con la disposición y la inquietud de saber qué es lo que pasó y cuál era su percepción, qué necesitaba él saber o qué quería decir sobre el caso.
So the mediation session started, and Brenda started explaining the procedures of mediation and the protocols, and asked him what he specifically wanted to know or express about this his case.
Entonces, la sesión se prolongó cerca de 4 horas.
The session was extended up to 4 hours.
Pero el tiempo transcurrió muy rápido. Aproximadamente a las 2 horas, el señor estalló en llanto.
So time flew, and when there were 2 hours, the man started crying.
Me compartió situaciones personales que estaba viviendo consecuencia de la pérdida de su pareja de vida.
It was because he was sharing personal situations he was going through after his wife loss.
Situaciones sobre consecuencias que él ve en forma paralela y que atribuye a la pérdida de su pareja.
Consequences that he sees in a parallel way and then affect the situation of his wife.
Si bien no aceptó continuar el caso en mediación porque mencionó no estar listo para dialogar con los médicos que atendieron a su esposa.
So at the end he didn't accept to continue the procedure of mediation because he expressed he was not ready to talk to the doctors that were handling his wife's situation.
Entendió que no existió responsabilidad médica ni institucional.
He understood that there was no medical negligence or institutional.
Sin embargo, me compartió que estaba muy dolido por su pérdida de una persona tan cercana a él.
He shared with Brenda that he was experiencing a really bad feeling of the loss of a relative who was very, very close to him.
Me agradeció mucho al término de la sesión que le haya brindado ese espacio, esa escucha y ese tiempo.
And in the end, he thanked Brenda for all the time and for him for the time that was investing on listening to him and all the process that was explained and everything.
Me agradeció también que en el hospital podemos contar con ese servicio que él hubiera adorado recibirlo un año antes.
He thanked her also to be for mediation to be part of the hospital, and he said that he would have liked to have that service of mediation a year before, when it was happening.
El servicio en este caso se inauguró el 7 de octubre del año 22.
In this case was happening on October 7th, 2022.
y él continuó con un procedimiento interno que ya está implementado para este tipo de reclamaciones en forma administrativa interna.
He actually was taken to a different process that was an internal process of the hospital that handles this type of situations or
Sin
this type of
embargo,
claims.
la semana pasada que se contactó con los compañeros del hospital que realizan ese seguimiento, les felicitó por el servicio de mediación, mandó saludarme y que todavía él recuerda que le hizo mucho bien haber tenido esa sesión.
Nevertheless, he was thanking the hospital like in the previous months for having the service of mediation, and he sent greetings to Brenda and thanks also for having this mediation field on the hospital.
Lo cual, pues, él fue muy enfático también al saludar, al agradecer que efectivamente él recibió el tiempo que él necesitaba ser escuchado.
So he emphasized that he was very thankful because he received the time that he needed to be heard.
Yes.
Lo que me deja de conclusión que las personas necesitamos un tiempo y un espacio de escucha activa.
What comes to an end, like to Brenda, that it is very important to have a time to listen to people.
Y la mediación nos brinda la oportunidad de hacerlo dentro de un hospital.
Mediation gives us that opportunity to listen to people inside of an hospital.
Yes. Yes, definitely yes. So that almost answers Mrs. Sethi's query. That vacuum, that understanding that is lacking, that lacuna is actually, when that is filled, then there actually was that 85% of the cases maybe were because of that lack of understanding, that lack of empathy that a person, because like I said earlier, they are when they are coming to, it is not only the physical trauma, maybe it is the physical trauma to the patient, but to the relatives, to the loved ones, it is more of an emotional trauma, and they are emotionally compromised at that stage, and there, that vacuum that is created, and that anger that fills up with the desperation of losing a loved one, or losing a part of maybe something that they came for, the expectations not being met, that vacuum is taken care of by mediation. And as Brinda is saying, I think Dr. Sandeep would also agree to me that if we have such kind of services in the hospital itself, those misunderstandings would not escalate to a level of, litigation being required. How do you
Definitely,
feel?
ma'am.
I think it has really been, we've been, more than 1 hour now. So it's been a wonderful experience. So any closing comments by anybody, or it's really what we came for. We have understood what medical mediation is. We have heard Brinda's experience in how she has helped people. And
I like to put one input.
yes,
There's Archana, a question regarding the compensation, how to decide that. So I like to add on to that. When ma'am, these cases are going to courts, and some of the cases, many of them also go up to Supreme Court of India, ma'am, the Honorable Supreme Court. And one of the biggest example in our country, we have a case of Kunal Saha versus Amri Hospital. The maximum compensation which has been is up to 11 crores in India in that case. So there are such cases, but to get a conclusion, a settlement in that case, it took 15 years.
yeah,
Dr. Kunal was himself a doctor practicing in USA, lost his job because of this litigation in India. He was practicing out, and that was taken into account by the courts while calculating the amount of compensation because of his loss of job in the US. So
that
even in other cases also, in all these cases where the case goes to consumer forum or to any other court or civil court or high court or Supreme Court. These considerations are taken where because of the negligence, if it's proved that it was because of the negligence, the patient has some amputation of the body part or has become some functional handicap, has caused some kind of functional handicap, which is going to affect his future life, his career, his job. He may lose his job, his career.
Yeah.
So that factor is already taken into consideration while coming up to the compensation. The expenditure of the treatment, how his life, the life will go ahead, the loss of his job, all those factors are being taken. But that's the problem, they are taken by the government rates.
Yeah.
There are no such formulas to calculate that. But in some cases, like now Dr. Kunal Sahab was a doctor in US, they calculated as per his salary in US, which was very high compared to Indian rates. That's when some of the cases we find that Indian consumers are getting very low compensation. But what I believe, ma'am, that a very good, qualified, trained, legally aware mediator can solve these problems and can also bring both the parties to agree within a mediation room. Then there may be no need of going to litigation, ma'am.
And I actually wanted to bring this point also. The work hours, when such a thing happens to a doctor, in spite of being, you are trying to be helpful, in spite of doing your level best, something goes wrong, and that comes up in a legal case comes up. The work efficiency that affects your work also in other aspects. It affects your life, it affects your work. So if that is handled at the start of at the initiation stage only, that I think would really be helpful for both the parties, even the doctors, even the service providers, and even the consumers or the ones who are going to be affected. So there comes the point that the vacuum, which of course in Mexico they are handling, like Brenda is saying, that they have their in-house mediator as she is serving. So if we take that to understand that it is a need, it is a need for the human. We have the system, the service providers have become so fast, and with the population increase, there are so many things that have to be taken care of. So everything in earlier times, the doctor had the time to cover that vacuum. He could explain things. Now with the fast paced life, with so many patients coming, with the workload, there has to be a vacuum that has to be filled. And of course, monetary compensation cases also would be taken care of by that person through mediation. So that litigation is. So that was really an awesome session. I must thank, I had not prepared anything to say because I was really, first of all, carried by whatever the emotional experiences Brenda has brought out, the statistics and the facts that Dr. Bansal has brought out, the emotional aspect that Ms. Sethi has brought out. So in all, it has been a wonderful session. I must thank you all, and it's a real pleasure to have this conversation. If anybody has some points, then otherwise I would just thank and stop the recording. Anybody would like to say anything?
¿Te gustaría decir algo más?
Muchas gracias.
Thanks a lot too.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure. It's a wonderful session. It's never happened that, always we were talking in amongst mediators what is happening. But talking from a perspective of a doctor, from a perspective of a common person, talking about mediation to people, bringing together and, talking, it really helps. And this conversation, I'm very sure whoever will listen, they will get the perspective of what medical mediation means to a mediator, to a doctor, from the person who faces such kind of issues. So thank you once again, all of you. That was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.